That night, everyone laughed and chatted around the walnut dining table while I sat at the edge like a shadow. When I mentioned the money I'd secretly paid for this family over 3 years, the entire table fell silent. Then he smirked. "Stop making up stories," my stepfather said, his wine glass hitting the table with a sharp crack right before his fist came at me. I didn't cry anymore. I hit record, and this time, they would hear me through to the very last word. "My name is Lauren Pierce, and I've been invisible in my own family for 12 years. I work as a risk analysis manager at Harborline Asset and Trust in downtown Cleveland, where I spend my days calculating probabilities and protecting the company from bad investments. Ironic, considering I couldn't protect myself from the worst investment of all, believing that family meant something to the people who were supposed to love me. The kitchen smelled of pot roast and rosemary when I arrived at Raymond's house that evening. My mother, Judith, had married him when I was 20, right after I'd graduated from Ohio State. She'd been so happy then, glowing in her cream wedding dress, promising me that this would be a fresh start for both of us. Raymond Cole seemed decent enough, owned a custom furniture shop, had a nice colonial in Shaker Heights, drove a sensible Ford truck. What she didn't mention was that his love came with conditions, and those conditions had a name: Dylan. Dylan Cole, 27 years old, Raymond's biological son, and the golden child who could do no wrong. While I was pulling 14-hour days at the firm, Dylan was finding himself through a series of failed ventures: a food truck that never got permits, a cryptocurrency scheme that evaporated overnight, and most recently, a luxury car detailing service that existed mainly in his Instagram stories. I hung my coat in the hallway, noting the new family portrait on the wall. There I was, slightly out of focus in the corner, while Dylan stood center with Ray's hand on his shoulder. Mom hadn't even noticed when they'd hung it last month. "Lauren's here," my mother called out, not looking up from the stove. The dining room was already filling with relatives: Ray's brother Tom, his wife Sandra, their teenage kids, and of course, Dylan, sprawled in the chair that used to be mine before these monthly dinners became performances where I played the role of grateful stepdaughter. I remembered the first time Ray had made it clear where I stood. 6 months after the wedding, I'd gotten my first promotion at Harborline. I'd rushed to tell them at Sunday dinner, practically vibrating with pride. Ray had looked up from his newspaper, said, "Well, that's what you're supposed to do. Isn't it work?" Then he'd spent the next 20 minutes discussing Dylan's potential, how he just needed the right opportunity, the right support. That same week, they'd given Dylan $30,000 for his food truck dream. My promotion bonus that year, I'd spent it covering Mom's credit card debt that she'd maxed out buying supplies for Ray's shop. The pattern had established itself so quietly I hadn't seen it forming. A medical bill here when Ray's heart medication wasn't covered. A loan there when the furniture shop hit rough patches during COVID. Emergency funds when Dylan's ventures inevitably collapsed. Always with the promise that it was temporary, that family helped family, that they'd make it right when things turned around. 4 years, $186,000. I'd kept every receipt, every transfer record, every email where Ray acknowledged the money but never the debt. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight, I was going to speak. I took my usual seat at the far end of the table, running my fingers over the smooth walnut surface one of Ray's pieces. He'd remind us frequently, worth $15,000 at market price. The wood was beautiful, I'd give him that. Too bad his character didn't match his craftsmanship. Through the kitchen doorway, I watched my mother adding finishing touches to dinner, her movements careful and practiced. She'd gotten thinner these past years, her smiles more brittle. Sometimes I caught her looking at me with something like apology in her eyes, but she never said the words. She'd chosen her side the day she'd said "I do" to Raymond Cole, and we both knew it. "Hey, Lauren." Dylan's voice drifted over, lazy and dismissive. "Mom says you're doing something with numbers at that company. Must be boring as hell." I didn't correct him about my title or the fact that I'd been promoted twice since the last time he'd bothered to ask. In his mind, I was just the stepsister who existed to solve problems when the family needed money. The dining room filled with the rest of them, voices overlapping, Ray holding court at the head of the table. He was already on his second glass of wine, his face flushed, gesturing broadly as he talked about his latest commission built-in shelving for a local judge's home library. As my mother set down the last dish, I felt the weight of my phone in my pocket, already set to record. 3 years of silence had built up behind my teeth. Tonight, they'd finally hear what I had to say, even if it meant burning this whole walnut table to the ground. The first transfer was March 15th, 2021, $3,400 for Ray's heart medication and uncovered cardiac tests. I'd wired it directly to Cleveland Clinic, telling myself it was the right thing to do. Mom had called me crying at 11:45 p.m. Saying the insurance had denied coverage and they'd cancel his procedure without immediate payment. That was the beginning. I kept a spreadsheet on my personal laptop, encrypted and backed up to 3 different clouds. Each row documented another piece of my financial life flowing into theirs. April, $5,000 for Mom's maxed credit cards, all charged at Ray's Furniture Supply wholesalers. June, $8,000 to prevent foreclosure on the shop's warehouse. September, $15,000 for Dylan's car, detailing startup equipment he'd sell 3 months later at a 60% loss. The pandemic had been their perfect storm and my perfect trap. Ray's custom furniture business hemorrhaged money as his wealthy clients tightened their belts. But somehow, there was always cash for Dylan's ventures. I'd discovered this through a simple mistake Mom had forwarded me an email meant for Ray, showing a $12,000 transfer to Dylan's account, dated the same week I'd covered their mortgage payment. I'd started digging then, the risk analyst in me unable to ignore the patterns. Credit card statements left on the counter during my visits. Bank documents Mom asked me to print because their printer was acting up. Ray's poorly hidden QuickBooks files on the family computer. The story they told was clear. My money wasn't saving them from disaster. It was funding Dylan's lifestyle. $22,000 for the food truck that never got permits because Dylan never filed the paperwork. $18,000 for cryptocurrency that he'd invested in something called Moon Rocket against every piece of advice I'd offered. $35,000 over 8 months for the car detailing service, a business that existed primarily as an Instagram account with 300 followers and exactly 4 customer reviews, 2 of which were from Ray and Mom. Meanwhile, every request came wrapped in guilt and urgency. Mom's voice shaking on the phone. Ray's veiled comments about how real family supported each other. Dylan's smirks when another one of his failures got quietly cleaned up. The evidence was particularly damning when laid out chronologically. October 2023, I'd transferred $9,000 for emergency shop repairs. The next day, according to Dylan's social media, he'd been in Vegas for a business development conference that looked suspiciously like bottle service and poker tables. December that same year, $15,000 for Ray's critical inventory purchase. 2 weeks later, papers I'd found showed they'd invested exactly that amount in Dylan's latest scheme importing cheap car accessories from China to resell at a 500% markup. But the coup de grace was the email chain I'd discovered in Mom's Gmail when she'd asked me to help her reset her password. Ray to Mom. Dated 6 months ago. Lauren won't notice. She makes good money and has no kids to spend it on. We're doing her a favor, giving her purpose. The money from her can keep things stable while we get Dylan launched. My mother had replied, I don't like this, Ray. His response, you like the roof over your head, then don't overthink it. $186,000, $432 over 4 years. I'd run the calculations with standard investment returns. That money would have been worth over $200,000 by now. Instead, it had vanished into a black hole named Dylan Cole, while Ray got to play successful businessman and my mother got to pretend she didn't know where the money really went. The legal documentation was meticulous. I'd drafted a promissory note after the first $50,000, sent it to Ray with clear terms 5% interest, 60-month repayment schedule. He'd responded via email, got your document, we'll square up when Dylan's business takes off. Family doesn't need contracts, but I understand you need records for tax purposes. Consider this my acknowledgement of the amounts. That email alone would be enough for court. But I had more. Texts from Mom confirming amounts, bank records showing transfers, even a voicemail from Ray, drunk after a Cavaliers game, laughing about how Dylan had blown through Lauren's latest contribution on a weekend in Miami but promising she'll never know the difference. They thought I was weak, quiet, compliant. They mistook my silence for stupidity, my generosity for gullibility. I sat at that dining table listening to Ray boom about his latest commission, watching Dylan scroll through his phone with the bored expression of someone who'd never worked for anything in his life. The folder on my phone contained everything, every receipt, every transfer, every piece of evidence that would hold up in court. The systematic extraction of my resources was ending tonight, one way or another. The pot roast sat heavy on the table, steam curling up between us like unspoken accusations. I waited until everyone had served themselves, until the comfortable rhythm of dinner conversation had settled in Ray, discussing lumber prices, Dylan showing his cousin something on his phone, Mom nervously refilling water glasses. "I need 3 minutes," I said, my voice cutting through the chatter like a blade through warm butter. Ray's fork paused midway to his mouth. "What's that? 3 minutes." "To discuss the family finances." Dylan snorted. "Since when do you—" "Since I've been paying for everything." The words came out flat, factual. $186,000 over 4 years. I'm stopping the transfers as of today. The silence hit the room like a physical force. Ray's face went from confused to amused to dark red in the span of 3 seconds. "What the hell are you talking about?" He set down his wine glass hard enough to slosh burgundy onto Mom's white tablecloth. "The money. Ray, for your heart medication, the shop mortgage, Dylan's ventures." I kept my voice steady, professional, the same tone I used when presenting risk assessments to the board. "I have documentation for every penny." "You're delusional." Dylan laughed, ugly and sharp. "Dad, she's making shit up for attention." "The food truck, Moon Rocket cryptocurrency, the car detailing equipment you sold 3 months after I bought it." I turned to Dylan. "Should I continue?" Ray's chair scraped against the hardwood as he stood. "You don't talk to him like that. Not in my house. Your house that I kept from foreclosure. Twice." The crack came before I saw him move an open palm across my mouth that sent me sideways into the table edge. Dishes rattled. Someone gasped. The taste of copper bloomed on my tongue. But this time was different. This time, I was ready. My phone was already recording in my pocket. I pulled it out, held it steady despite my shaking hands, and set it on the table where everyone could see the red recording light. "That's assault," I said quietly, dabbing blood from my split lip with a napkin. "Would you like to do it again for the camera?" Ray lunged forward, grabbed my wrist, twisted. The phone clattered across the table but kept recording. His other hand formed a fist, connected with my ribs, a dull, crushing impact that drove the air from my lungs. "Ray." My mother's scream sounded distant, underwater. "You ungrateful bitch," he snarled, spit flying. "After everything we've done for you, taking you in, giving you family. Taking me in, I wheezed, pulling free. I pay for everything while you pour it into him." I pointed at Dylan, who sat frozen, his mouth open. "Your son, who's never held a job for more than 3 months. "Don't you dare!" Ray raised his hand again. "Raymond Cole, you just committed battery, on camera, in front of 7 witnesses. I grabbed my phone, still recording. Anyone else want to add something? Tom and Sandra were backing away from the table. The teenagers had their own phones out whether to call for help or record the drama. I couldn't tell. Mom stood frozen by the kitchen door, her hands over her mouth. "You're sick," Dylan finally managed. "Coming here, causing drama, attacking Dad." Attacking. I laughed, and it came out broken, hysterical. "Your father just hit me. Twice. After I told him I'm cutting off the money supply that's been funding your failures. Get out!" Ray's voice was low, dangerous. "Get out of my house!" "Gladly." I stood slowly, ribs screaming. "But first, you should know I'm pressing charges, assault and battery. I'm also filing a civil suit for the money, every penny, plus interest." "You can't prove." "Your email acknowledging the debt, Mom's texts confirming amounts, bank records. It's all documented. Ray, I'm a risk analyst. Documentation is what I do." The room erupted, Ray shouting about ungrateful bitches who don't understand family. Dylan calling me a psycho who's destroying everything. Mom crying, begging everyone to calm down. Tom hustling his family toward the door. I walked to the hallway, each step measured despite the pain radiating from my ribs. Behind me, Ray was still raging about how I'd eaten at his table, how I'd been welcomed into his home, how real family didn't keep score. "Real family doesn't steal," I said without turning around. "Real family doesn't hit. You come back here and what you'll hit me again. Please do. The prosecutors love repeat offenses." I grabbed my coat, my hands steady now, despite everything. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a cold clarity. Ray had given me exactly what I needed, undeniable evidence of his violence, witnessed and recorded. As I opened the front door, I heard my mother's voice, small and pleading. "Lauren, please, don't do this." I turned to look at her, this woman who'd chosen her husband over her daughter's safety, who'd stood by while he bled me dry and now beat me bloody. "You watched him hit me," I said. "You all did, and not one of you tried to stop him." The door closed on their protests, their excuses, their anger. I made it to my car before the shaking started, managed to drive 3 blocks before I had to pull over. Then I called Maya, my friend from law school who specialized in domestic violence cases. "I need to go to the ER, I said when she answered. "For documentation, and then we're going to destroy them." "Lauren, what happened?" I spoke up, and Ray showed everyone exactly who he really is. The emergency room at Cleveland Clinic documented everything split lip requiring 3 stitches, bruised ribs, contusions on my wrist where Ray had grabbed me. The nurse took photographs under fluorescent lights that made the bruises look purple-black against my skin. By 3:15 a.m., I had a medical report, a case number, and a referral to victim services. Maya Ortiz met me at her office at 7 a.m. sharp. 2 cups of coffee already waiting on her desk. We'd known each other since law school at Case Western, where I'd helped her through corporate finance while she'd coached me through constitutional law. Now, she ran a small practice specializing in domestic violence and civil litigation, exactly what I needed. "Show me everything," she said, her usually warm voice all business. I laid it out systematically, the way I'd present a risk assessment, financial documents in one pile, communications in another, the medical report and recording from last night in the center. Jesus, Lauren. Maya's fingers traced the printed email where Ray acknowledged the debt. "This is prosecutorial gold. We're going to nail him 3 ways. The plan came together like a mathematical proof, each step building on the last. Layer 1, financial strangulation. We started immediately. Maya drafted a formal demand letter while I sat at her conference table, systematically cutting every financial tie. The premium credit card where Mom and Ray were authorized users canceled. The automatic transfers for their bills terminated. The emergency fund account I'd given Mom access to frozen and password changed. "They'll notice within days," Maya warned. "Ray's business credit is shot. Without your backing, they can't even order supplies." "Good." I signed the revocation of power of attorney I'd stupidly given Mom 2 years ago during a health scare. Let them feel what drowning looks like. We sent the demand letter via certified mail and email, giving them 14 days to respond with a repayment plan for the full $186,000 plus interest calculated at Ohio's statutory rate. Maya insisted on adding a clause about ceasing all contact except through legal counsel. Layer 2, legal architecture. The restraining order was filed by noon. With the medical documentation and recording, the judge granted a temporary protective order immediately. Ray couldn't come within 500 feet of me, my workplace, or my apartment. The criminal charges will take longer, Maya explained, organizing documents into labeled folders. But the prosecutor's office will love this. Clear evidence, multiple witnesses, recorded confession essentially. Ray's looking at minimum probation, possibly 60 days in county. The civil suit was a masterpiece of legal precision. Breach of verbal contract, unjust enrichment, fraud by intentional misrepresentation regarding Dylan's business ventures, intentional infliction of emotional distress, battery. We're asking for the principal interest, punitive damages, and legal fees. Maya tallied. Could be close to $300,000 when we're done. Layer 3, Social Demolition. This was the delicate part. Ray was running for a position on the Regional Woodworkers Guild Board, a position that would give him inside track on school district contracts worth millions. The election was in 3 weeks. We can't defame him, Maya cautioned, but we can ensure the truth is available. We created a simple fax document copies of the police report, the restraining order filing, and the civil suit summary. Public records, all of them. Maya would file them with the court, making them searchable and accessible. If guild members wanted to do their due diligence on candidates, they'd find everything. I also discovered something interesting in my documentation review. Ray had been using some of my money he'd claimed was for shop expenses to make donations to guild board members' charity events. Technically legal, but ethically questionable given the money's true source. We mentioned this in the civil suit, Maya decided. Part of establishing the pattern of misuse of funds. By evening, we'd assembled what Maya called the litigation package from hell. Every document cross-referenced, every claim supported by evidence, every procedural requirement exceeded. They'll try to contact you, Maya warned as we finished. Guilt, anger, threats, maybe even apologies. Everything goes through me now. What about Mom? The question hurt to ask. She made her choice when she watched him hit you and did nothing. She's named in the civil suit for unjust enrichment. She benefited from the fraud even if she didn't orchestrate it. I nodded, something cold and final settling in my chest. The mother I'd tried to protect for years had stood silent while her husband's fist connected with my ribs. That was all I needed to know. Maya walked me to my car, the parking garage harsh under security lights. You know they'll escalate before this is over. Let them. I touched the stitches on my lip, a reminder of what escalation had already cost Ray. I've got their own words, their own actions, all documented. They can't hurt me without hurting themselves worse. And the guild election, that's just karma. I'm not spreading gossip or lies. I'm filing legal documents that happen to be public record. If Ray's potential colleagues want to know who they're voting for, the information is available. Maya smiled, sharp as winter. Remind me never to piss you off. I gave them 4 years to do the right thing, I said, opening my car door. Now they get to learn what I do professionally calculate risk and minimize exposure. Ray and Dylan are about to become a case study in catastrophic loss. As I drove home, my phone buzzed repeatedly. Mom, Dylan, unknown numbers that were probably Ray's friends. I let them all go to voicemail. The time for talking was over. Now came the beautiful, terrible precision of legal machinery grinding into motion. 3 layers of consequences, each reinforcing the others. Financial ruin, legal jeopardy, social disgrace. They'd taken $186,000 and 4 years of my life. I was going to take everything else. The formal demand letter arrived at Ray's house on Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, the emails started. Ray's response came through his personal account at 2:47 p.m., forwarded immediately by Maya. The subject line, "Re your bullshit lawsuit." Lauren, I don't know what game you're playing, but this ends now. That money was gifts to your mother and her family. No court in Ohio will make a man pay back gifts to family. You want to destroy your mother's marriage over your hurt feelings, and you lied about me hitting you. You fell into the table drunk. Everyone saw it. Drop this now or I'll sue you for defamation. You have 24 hours. Raymond Cole. Maya's response was surgical. Mr. Cole, your email of today's date has been received and preserved as evidence. Thank you for the written confirmation that you received money from my client. Your characterization of assault as my client being drunk is contradicted by medical records showing her blood alcohol was 0.00 and by your own recorded voice during the incident. All further communication should be directed through legal counsel. Maya Ortiz, Esq. Ray's reply came within minutes. I never admitted to receiving money as a loan. Stop twisting my words, you vultures. He'd just admitted to receiving the money in writing. Again. Wednesday brought Dylan. He texted from 3 different numbers after I'd blocked the first 2. Lauren, we need to talk. This is insane. You're destroying Mom. I'll pay you back. Just stop this. Finally, he sent an email that Maya forwarded with a note. He's panicking. Perfect. Lauren, let's be adults about this. I know Dad lost his temper, but you have to understand the stress he's under. The shop is struggling and Mom is worried sick. You're going to give her a heart attack. I can meet you at Starbucks on Cedar, just us, and we can work out a payment plan. Maybe $500 a month. I'm getting a real job soon. I promise. The car detailing thing is actually taking off. Just drop the criminal charges at least. Dad didn't mean it. You know how he gets when he drinks. Dylan. Maya crafted the response. Mr. Cole. Any meeting must include legal counsel. Your offer of $500 a month for a $186,000 debt would take 31 years to repay without interest. This is not a serious proposal. Your father's intoxication during battery does not excuse it. Legally, it may enhance charges. Maya Ortiz, Esq. Thursday. Dylan tried a different angle. He showed up at the Starbucks where I sometimes worked remotely, sliding into the chair across from me before I could pack up. Don't make a scene, he said quietly. Hands spread on the table. I'm not here to fight. I pulled out my phone, started recording openly. You're violating the restraining order by proxy. Leave now or I call the police. Jesus, Lauren, I'm trying to help you here. His voice took on that wounded tone he'd perfected over years. Dad's planning to countersue. He says you assaulted him first, that you threw wine in his face. Uncle Tom is backing him up. Is that what you're here to tell me, that your father is planning to perjure himself? Dylan leaned forward. Look, I get it. You're pissed about the money. But some of that was legitimate. The food truck would have worked if you'd filed for permits, if you'd shown up to the commissary kitchen you'd booked, if you hadn't spent the equipment money in Vegas. His face flushed. You don't know. October 15th, 2023. Caesar's Palace. $3,000 bottle service charge. Posted on your Instagram the same night I wired $9,000 for emergency shop repairs. That was a business meeting. Then you'll have receipts for tax deductions. Please submit them to my attorney. He stood abruptly. You're going to regret this. Dad's connected. The guild members. They're all his friends. They'll destroy your reputation. My reputation as someone who won't be beaten and robbed, I'll take that reputation. You're sick. You know that normal people don't document every little thing, waiting to backstab family. Normal families don't steal almost $200,000 and then assault the person they stole from. Friday morning, my mother called from her sister's phone. I almost didn't answer, but Maya had advised me to give her one opportunity juries liked to see attempts at resolution. Lauren, sweetheart, her voice was thick with tears. Please, just listen. You have 2 minutes. I know Ray was wrong. The hitting that was unforgivable. I should have stopped him. I was in shock. You have to understand. He's never hit me before. Just stolen from me. Just treated me like an ATM while funneling everything to Dylan. That's not we always intended to pay you back. Then agree to a payment plan. Real numbers. Legal documentation. Silence stretched across the line. Your father would be ashamed of you, she finally whispered. My father has been dead for 15 years, and he would be ashamed of you, watching your husband beat your daughter for telling the truth. If you pursue this, Lauren, we're done. I'll never speak to you again. You mean you'll never ask me for money again? I mean, you'll have no mother, no family. You'll be alone. I've been alone since you married Ray. At least now I'll be alone with my ribs intact and my bank account not being drained. She hung up. Maya reviewed the week's communications that afternoon, organizing them into evidence folders. They're playing directly into our hands, she said. Ray's denying receiving loans but admitting to receiving money. Dylan's offering token payments that acknowledge the debt. Your mother just tried emotional blackmail on a recorded line. What's next? Ray's going to get desperate. The restraining order will be served with the criminal summons on Monday. The guild will have questions once the civil suit goes public. His reputation, his business, his freedom, it's all at risk now. Good. Maya studied me. You're not having second thoughts. They had 4 years to have second thoughts about stealing from me. Ray had a lifetime to learn not to hit women. Dylan had every opportunity to get a real job instead of living off my labor. And my mother chose her side when she stayed silent. The fundraiser is next week, Ray's big campaign event for the guild position. I smiled, the stitches in my lip pulling slightly. I know. I have it in my calendar. After all, I paid for the venue deposit 6 months ago when Ray claimed he needed it for shop repairs. You didn't. Check the receipt. Fairmont Country Club, $3,000 deposit for their oak room, paid from my account. Supposedly for Raymond Cole Custom Furniture Quarterly Client Appreciation Dinner. Maya laughed, sharp and delighted. He's hosting his campaign event with your money. And everyone's going to know it by the time they arrive. The Fairmont Country Club's oak room glowed with warm Edison bulbs strung across exposed beams, elegant touches that Ray would claim showed his aesthetic sensibility. The same aesthetic I'd paid for, unknowingly, 6 months ago. I arrived at 7:30 p. Maya beside me in a sharp navy suit. My dress was deliberate professional black, high neck to hide any lingering bruises, a briefcase instead of a purse. Not a victim, a creditor. The room was already filling. Guild board members in their blazers with wooden pin badges, Ray's business associates, Pastor Williams from their church, City Councilman Derek Price, whose home library Ray had just finished, and there, holding court by the bar, Raymond Cole himself, red-faced with wine and confidence, Dylan at his side in an ill-fitting suit. Steady, Maya murmured as we entered. We're here legally. The restraining order allows professional contact in public spaces with legal counsel present. Ray spotted us within seconds. His smile froze, then twisted into something ugly before he forced it back to neutral. He whispered urgently to Dylan, who immediately started moving toward us. He takes one more step. I call 911. I said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. Dylan stopped. Several heads turned. Ladies and gentlemen, Ray's voice boomed over the confusion. If I could have your attention for tonight's program. Perfect timing. He'd just given me an audience. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the portable projector I'd brought small enough to fit in my briefcase, powerful enough to display on the white wall behind the podium. My fingers were steady as I pulled up the first slide. Mr. Cole, I said, my voice carrying across the room. Before you begin your campaign speech, I believe your potential constituents deserve transparency about your financial practices. You can't be here, Ray snarled, starting toward me. Maya stepped forward. Restraining order permits professional contact with legal counsel present. This is a public event in a venue paid for by my client. We have every right to be here. The projector flared to life. The first slide a copy of the Fairmont deposit receipt. My name, my credit card, $3,000. Guild fundraiser venue added in Ray's handwriting on the memo line. Gasps rippled through the crowd. That's a lie, Ray shouted. That was a business expense I repaid. Click, next slide. Ray's email. Got your document. We'll square up when Dylan's business takes off. Click. Bank transfer records. Date after date. Amount after amount. All flowing from my account to Ray's, to Mom's, to Dylan's. $186,000, I announced to the silent room. Over 4 years. While Mr. Cole told me it was for medical expenses and emergency repairs, the money funded his son's failed businesses and this very campaign. Councilman Price was backing toward the door. 2 guild board members had their phones out, recording. Pastor Williams looked like he'd swallowed glass. "She's crazy," Dylan called out desperately. "She's been harassing our family." Click. The audio started playing. Ray's voice, clear and damning. "You ungrateful bitch." The sound of impact. My gasp of pain. "After everything we've done for you." Someone dropped a glass. It shattered on the oak floor. "That's assault," a woman whispered. Click. The medical report. Close-up photographs of bruises, stitches, documentation from Cleveland Clinic. "Mr. Cole has been charged with assault and battery," Maya announced professionally. "A restraining order is currently in effect. We're also pursuing civil action for fraud, unjust enrichment, and breach of contract." Ray's face had gone from red to purple. "You set me up. You came to my home to provoke. I came to your home for a family dinner. I told you I was ending financial support. You responded with violence." I clicked to the next slide, a screenshot of Dylan's Instagram from Vegas. Timestamp matched to a bank transfer. "Your son was spending my money on bottle service while you told me it was for shop repairs." The room erupted. Guild members demanding answers. Pastor Williams asking about the charity donations Ray had made with my money. I noted loudly. Councilman Price on his phone with someone, shaking his head. Ray lunged forward, stopped only by Tom grabbing his arm. "You're destroying everything. My business, my reputation." "No," I said quietly, but the microphone I'd brought picked it up, broadcast it through the portable speaker. "You destroyed it yourself. Every transfer you took claiming emergency. Every lie about repayment. And especially the moment you put your hands on me." "This is defamation," Ray shouted. "Truth is an absolute defense against defamation," Maya stated calmly. "Every document shown is authentic. The audio is unedited. The medical records are certified." A guild board member. Robert something, I recognized him from Ray's photos, stepped forward. "Ray, we need to discuss this privately. The vote is next week, and this is problematic." "Problematic!" Ray whirled on him. "She's ambushing me at my own event." "The event she paid for," Robert noted, looking at the still projected receipt. "Ray, did you really take nearly $200,000 from her?" Silence fell like a hammer. "It was family money," Ray said weakly. "Gifts, misunderstandings." Click. One final slide. Ray's text to Mom. "Lauren won't notice. She makes good money and has no kids to spend it on." My mother, who'd been hiding in the corner, let out a small sob. "I think we've seen enough," Robert said. "Ray, the Guild will be discussing this at an emergency meeting tomorrow. I suggest you prepare your explanations." The room began emptying rapidly. Ray's supporters became former supporters, filing out with averted eyes and whispered conversations. Within 10 minutes, only Ray, Dylan, Mom, and a handful of others remained in the oak room I'd paid for. "You've ruined me," Ray said, his voice hollow. "No, I've simply stopped funding your lies and refused to be your victim." I packed up the projector, each movement precise. "The criminal trial is next month. The civil suit will proceed regardless. I suggest you get a lawyer, a real one, not whoever Dylan found on Instagram." As we walked to the door, my mother called out, "Lauren, wait!" I paused but didn't turn. "Are you happy now?" she asked. "I'm not happy, but I'm not afraid anymore, and I'm not being robbed anymore. That's enough." The November air was cold and clean outside the country club. Maya and I walked to our cars in companionable silence, our heels clicking on frost-touched pavement. "That was brutal," she finally said. "That was justice starting to turn its wheels. The brutal part comes when they realize I have more documentation, much more." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Robert from the Guild. Can we meet tomorrow? I have questions about Ray's financial dealings regarding Guild funds." I showed it to Maya. She smiled, sharp as winter moonlight. And now the dominoes fall. The second family dinner was Ray's idea, a reconciliation gathering he'd announced through Mom's sister, scheduled for the following Friday at 7 p.m. He'd invited Pastor Williams, Councilman Price, 3 guild board members, and his lawyer, framing it as an opportunity to clear up misunderstandings and heal family wounds. I knew better. This was Ray's attempt at damage control, a performance for the people whose opinions still mattered to his crumbling reputation. Maya and I arrived at 6:55 p.m. I'd alerted the police earlier that day, providing them with the restraining order details and explaining I would be attending a family gathering with legal counsel where the respondent would also be present. Officer Janet Mills assured me a patrol car would be nearby. The dining room had been staged like a theater set. The walnut table gleamed with fresh polish. Mom's best china was out. Ray stood at the head in his only good suit, Dylan beside him, both wearing expressions of practiced contrition. "Lauren," Ray began as soon as I entered, his voice dripping with false warmth. "Thank you for coming. We're here to make this right." I set my briefcase on the side table and pulled out my phone, placing it prominently in the center of the table. "I'm recording this interaction for legal purposes. Does anyone object?" Ray's lawyer, a sweating man named Carl Brennan who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, shook his head. No objection. The witnesses arranged themselves awkwardly around the table. Pastor Williams opened with a prayer about forgiveness that made my skin crawl. Then Ray launched into his performance. "I want to apologize," he said, looking directly at Councilman Price. "I lost my temper. The stress of the business, the pandemic. It's been overwhelming, but that's no excuse for my behavior." "Your violent behavior," I corrected. "Say what it was." His jaw tightened. "My inappropriate response to a family disagreement." I pulled out my laptop, connected it to the projector I'd brought again. "Let's be specific about what we're discussing." The wall lit up with documentation, bank statements, email chains. The audio began playing not just the assault this time, but a compilation I'd assembled, Ray drunk, laughing about Lauren's latest contribution. Dylan bragging to friends about his investor who didn't expect returns. Mom on the phone, crying to her sister about not knowing how to face me while Ray spent my money. "Turn it off," Ray snarled, his mask slipping. "This is what reconciliation requires," I said calmly. "Acknowledgement of facts." Robert from the guild leaned forward. "Ray, is that really you discussing guild funds being mixed with personal accounts?" New slide. Deposits to Ray's business account from guild treasury for materials. The same amounts transferred to Dylan's account days later. "That's taken out of context." "The context," Maya interrupted, "is embezzlement. My client's research uncovered concerning patterns that we've shared with appropriate authorities." Ray shot to his feet. "You vindictive little—" "Careful," I warned. "You're already facing assault charges. This is my house, my table." He slammed his palm down, making dishes jump. "Purchased with my money." "Would you like to see those receipts too?" The projector flashed to furniture store invoices, my credit card numbers partially visible, Ray's signature on delivery confirmations. Dylan tried to salvage the moment. "Look, everyone makes mistakes. We're prepared to work out a payment plan. Your previous offer was $500 per month for a $186,000 debt. Are you prepared to make a serious offer?" Carl Brennan cleared his throat. "My clients are prepared to offer $10,000 as a settlement for all claims." Maya actually laughed. "10,000 for assault, battery, fraud, and unjust enrichment. That's insulting." "It's what we can afford," Ray exploded. "You've destroyed my business. The guild won't work with me. The bank called my loans. You've ruined everything. I've revealed everything. There's a difference." Pastor Williams stood uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should pray. Pray after you return the $5,000 donation Ray made to your church building fund last month," I suggested. "That was my money too." The pastor went pale. Ray's control snapped entirely. He swept his arm across the table, sending china crashing to the floor. Get out of my house." "Ray, calm down," his lawyer warned, but Ray was beyond listening. He moved toward me, fast, aggressive. "You think you're so smart you think you've won?" I stood my ground. "I think you're about to violate a restraining order in front of 6 witnesses." He grabbed my arm, hard, fingers digging in. "Ray, no!" Mom screamed. But it was too late. I'd pressed the emergency call button on my phone the moment he'd started moving. Officer Mills was already at the door she'd been parked outside, as promised. "Sir, step away from her. Now!" Ray released me but didn't retreat. "This is my home. She's trespassing." "She's here with legal counsel for a family meeting you organized," Officer Mills said calmly. "And you just put hands on someone with an active restraining order against you. Turn around." "This is ridiculous. Turn around, sir." The click of handcuffs was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. They caught the light from the chandelier, the one I'd paid for last Christmas when Ray claimed the old one was a fire hazard. "Raymond Cole, you're under arrest for violation of a protective order and assault." Dylan started filming with his phone. "This is police harassment. She set him up." "Sir, your father grabbed her on camera in front of witnesses while subject to a restraining order. That's a crime." As Officer Mills led Ray out, he turned back, his face twisted with rage. "You're dead to this family. Dead. I've been dead to this family since the day you decided I was nothing but a bank account," I replied. The room erupted after they left. Carl Brennan scrambling to follow his client, Dylan screaming about lawsuits and entrapment, Mom sobbing in the corner, the witnesses fleeing like the house was on fire. Maya and I stood in the wreckage of broken china and shattered pretenses. "That went well," she said dryly. "He's going to jail now. Overnight at least, bail hearing tomorrow. But violating a restraining order while out on bond for the original assault, the judge won't be amused." I looked at the walnut table, its surface now scarred where Ray had slammed his hands. This table he'd been so proud of, worth $15,000 at market price. He'd always said. I pulled out my phone and made a note. "Add damaged property to civil suit. Table scarred during second assault." "You're really going to charge him for damaging his own table?" "My receipts show I paid for the wood he used to make it. So, technically, it's my table." Maya smiled. "Remind me never to piss you off." They had 4 years to make it right. Now they get to lose everything. As we left, I stopped in the doorway and looked back at my mother, still crying in her chair. "The offer stands. Mom, sign over your portion of the house equity to cover part of the debt. Testify truthfully about the financial abuse, and I'll drop the charges against you personally." She looked up, mascara streaming. "You're not my daughter anymore." "I haven't been your daughter since you chose him. I've just been your ATM." The door closed on her sobs. Outside, Ray was being driven away in a police cruiser, his face visible through the back window, mouth moving in what were probably curses I couldn't hear. The walnut table would bear those scars forever, evidence of the night Raymond Cole destroyed his own life with his own hands, just as I'd planned. The courtroom smelled like old wood and disappointment when Ray was sentenced 3 weeks later. 60 days in county jail for violating the protective order, 2 years probation for assault, and mandatory anger management classes. His lawyer had tried to argue for leniency, citing Ray's contributions to the community and momentary lapse in judgment. The judge, a woman named Patricia Kearns who'd seen too many momentary lapses, wasn't moved. The civil trial came 2 months after that. Ray showed up 20 pounds lighter, his suit hanging loose, Dylan beside him in a borrowed tie. Mom sat in the back row, avoiding my eyes. The judgment was everything Maya had promised: $186,000 in principal, $32,000 in interest, $40,000 in punitive damages, and attorney's fees. Ray's business was liquidated. The house my money had paid most of the mortgage was ordered sold, but I wasn't done with the table. That walnut dining table, the one Ray had built with his own hands from wood I'd unknowingly paid for, the one scarred by his violence I claimed it in the settlement. had it delivered to my apartment where it stood in my dining room like a trophy. Every morning, I drank coffee at the table where they'd ignored me, where he'd hit me, where I'd finally fought back. The first Thanksgiving after everything. I hosted dinner at that table. Maya came, along with friends from work who'd become my chosen family. We laughed over wine I could finally afford again, told stories that didn't end in bruises or bank transfers. The scars on the table's surface caught the candlelight, beautiful in their honesty. Dylan tried to contact me once more. 6 months later, a text from a new number. Dad's working at a hardware store now. Mom's living with her sister. I hope you're happy. I didn't respond, but I was happy. Not because they were struggling that brought no joy. I was happy because I could walk into my apartment without checking my bank balance first. Happy because my ribs didn't ache when I laughed. Happy because the word family no longer meant fear. The morning I write this, it's been exactly 1 year since that first dinner where I spoke up. I'm sitting at the walnut table with my laptop, the morning sun streaming through windows I paid for with money no one can steal. The table has been refinished, but the scars remain. I asked the craftsman to leave them. They're part of its story now. My story. I picked up the fallen napkin from that last family dinner I'd kept it. Don't ask me why, and placed it on the table. Clean white linen against dark wood. It looked like a flag of surrender, or maybe victory. Perhaps they're the same thing sometimes. My phone buzzes. A text from my mother's sister. She wants to talk to you. I delete it without responding. Some bridges, once burned, light the way forward. The ashes of what we were became the foundation of what I am, someone who knows her worth, who documents everything, who never mistakes silence for peace. The walnut table stands solid beneath my hands as I close my laptop. Tonight, I'm hosting another dinner party. Real friends, real laughter, real life. The table that witnessed my destruction now holds my resurrection. I never did get that family dinner where they listened to me. Instead, I got something better, a life where I don't need their attention, their approval, or their love that came with a price tag I couldn't afford. The table is mine now. The scars are mine. The victory, small and sharp and complete, is mine. And they will never sit at my table again. I turned off the lights in my dining room, running my fingers one last time across those familiar scars. In the darkness, they felt like Braille, spelling out a simple truth. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies, it's surviving them, thriving without them, and keeping their table as a reminder that you won. The walnut gleamed in the streetlight from the window. Beautiful, scarred, mine. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing your own thoughts about family, boundaries, and standing up for yourself. Your stories matter too, and this community is here to listen.